Hello, it's Everything's Lightly. Today, I don't know, I was watching a crazy show and I couldn't figure out if this is a Christian show or not. Then I thought to myself, a show about botched plastic surgeries can't be about Christianity, can it? And then my wife was like, yeah, it can be. Because you're actually watching people walk through a type of delusion. And it can teach you about this space between who we are and who we think we want to be. I don't know. And I thought, how can we know what a Christian movie is? And so here we are. I brought on Bazed, BLA, Bazed Lit Analyzer. He's kind of a famous guy who does movies online. And here's the thing with him. He's great. But also, we got into all kinds of stuff. The Tucker Carlson thing going on. We got into Angel Films, how that works. Because I learned a little bit how that works. I met with Angel Films. We got into the I word. Can you say that? We got into the I word, which is we got into I squared. The two countries that are near each other. The Kukulakapaka. The Kukulakapaka. That thing. The Kukulaka War. I can't say war. I can't even hide what I'm trying to talk about. We got into that. We got into lots of stuff. Today, on Everything's Lightly, the best Christian movies, and I don't even know what one is. And is there such a thing? Can't wait. On Everything's Lightly. Guys, it's BLA. This is the guy on the internet that I like to mess around with when it comes to films and listen to. And also you have a very kind of old world feel for life. And are you going to smoke with us today? Because I brought a drink.
Yes.
Did you bring a drink?
No. Oh, I brought my regular drink.
Oh, well, we can toast with Red Bull. It's not allowed in the Georgian Republic. You know about our restaurant? Did I ever tell you about it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, we make a toast there. So I want to make a toast to the universal thing called that which goes into our bodies. May we be thankful for it. Water, drink, food, wine. In my case, I'm drinking a Borjomi. It's a water from Georgia. So to your Red Bull, but to the things that nourish us, man. Goggy Marjos.
Cheers, buddy.
Well, I think we're going to do 45 minutes of Christian movie. What the heck is a Christian movie?
Yeah.
You ever heard of one? Did you ever see one before?
Yeah, well, I think it depends. There are things. Yeah,
I agree.
That's what
I agree.
we're going to talk about, I assume. But there are Christian movies, and I've got a list of some that I think are powerful Christian movies. But I think that part of the problem with movies is that when films are overtly Christian at times, for instance, and by overt Christian, I mean, let's say they're made by a Christian studio or something. They tend to be didactic and they compromise the form and the aesthetic of the film with an overemphasis on the message in the movie. Right. And I think that the best Christian films are ones where we look at life through the lens of film, literally through a lens. We look at life through this lens presented in terms of a Christian paradigm, usually Christian redemption, morals and standards, but they're not pushed on us as if all that's to say that if you want a Christian message in terms of, for instance, if you want to read Christianity, then you read scripture, you worship, and that's something different than art. Art is something that's much lower than that, but that's because I think that, Christ speaks in parables a lot. He speaks in parables. We're told the Bible functions in terms of there's a narrative that occurs and there are stories, and there's this, it's the foundation for all literature and all art, but it's also something that it's not a manifesto. It's not a bland list and treatise.
What is that when we know a manifesto's happening? Go deeper in that. Why isn't that art again? Is it because it's didactic?
That's part of it. I think that a manifesto tends to be something that is, first of all, ideologically or politically driven, and that is completely didactic, and that is a sort of treatise for the way things need to change. but that's different than we get in Scripture. Scripture is it's all based in God and in Christ, and the way that we're supposed to live to find redemption in Christ. Everything in Scripture is about finding redemption in Christ, and we live in a fallen world, no matter what, through movies. And when we look at movies, that's a sort of confusing statement. When we look at movies, when we're watching films that act as if we don't sometimes tend to muddy the waters, and they tend to overreach. Whereas when we look at the normal events in life, and they can be extraordinary events, but that's when we really see Christian, our Christian belief sort of brought out in films.
Are you, because give us your bona fides real quick. You're an educator, and you've studied literature and movies, and then got into this beautiful podcast you have where you just do tons of movies. But you're a Catholic guy, yeah?
No.
How would you characterize your religion?
No, well, I was born, I was baptized, raised, confirmed in the Episcopal Church in Virginia, and my whole family is, everyone I know here is. I went to an Episcopal school, an Episcopal private school. I served in the church, and I went to school in Northern Ireland. Got my degree there. I went to drama school in England at the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School. And then I acted for a year, I taught in Malaysia for a little bit. I went back and got a master's degree in Belfast again. And then
Did you have your voice before you went to Ireland or after?
I've always had
this voice.
I've always had this voice since I was little.
I could see you like at 11, like, "What's up, Mom? You got the bologna?"
That's exactly how
I'm looking for bologna with the yellow mustard, Mom.
That's right.
I
need a chocolate milk. Hurry up. No, I wasn't like that.
The bus is late again. I'm just going to have one smoke.
That's right. Well, that didn't come till I was 12. So
sorry, but keep going.
Yeah.
So then, wait, so you're a Christian. So in your lifetime, did you ever try to expunge Christianity from you?
No.
Did you go through a secular atheist
No,
age?
never once. I've never had that. Thank God. I've never experienced any of that. And I've been pretty firm in my belief and practice my whole life.
So then that was to lead to this, I think, which is fun, kind of. So then you're great with all these films and insight. And so do you find yourself rooting for something? Because I think a lot of the people watching this pod would be like, yeah, I kind of root. I know my wife and I'll sit on the couch and root for that movie to be Christic, but we don't really mean Christian. That's a different thing. We call it like a Christic thing. Do you find yourself rooting for this is going to obviously be a redemptive moment here, and then or do you not root as a Christian when you're watching a film?
I do. Absolutely. I root. Yeah, very much so. And I got to say, that, you are Orthodox, and I've met a lot of my friends through the Orthodox Church, and a lot of the people who watch my channel are Orthodox, and I've learned more about Christianity through listening and reading about Orthodoxy for years. And in fact, and I'll just say this right now. I think that there are a lot of problems in the world, and I think that, this has been I don't usually share this, but this has been a big, not crisis, but it's been a big point in my life for years now, about dealing with what I've seen as the infection into especially the Episcopal Church in a number of ways. I've been lucky that I haven't had any of the shenanigans, any of the things that are normally the problems in my church. We've never experienced that, but I see it as a bigger, broader problem. And I think that, I've really come to consider what I think of when I think of Christ's church on earth. And I think that the Orthodox Church is Christ's true church. I do. And I think that the
Wait, this might be some breaking news.
Well, no,
right
I mean,
here.
I don't usually talk about this because it's not something that I really share with people because it's very personal to me.
I appreciate it, though. I
But
appreciate it.
but you know, especially this sort of comes out in all sorts of ways. And I've been doing a series on C.S. Lewis, and C.S. Lewis was baptized in Anglican. He had that very crisis that you were talking about for a long time, and I don't feel any kind of kinship with them in that sense. But he was he lived in he was born in Northern Ireland. He was educated in Britain, and then he went through a phase where he became a deist, and then eventually found his way to Christ specifically. And C.S. Lewis is an Anglican. He's a Church of England, but he talks a lot about what he terms, he calls it little o orthodoxy, in terms of orthodoxical issues and solutions within the church. And I really relate to that in a number of ways. And I think that things have moved on beyond that to now, where we really are at a kind of I don't know, a line in the sand is the expression.
It's happening, man.
It is happening. And
it's happening.
Yeah. So
C.S. Lewis was the guy for me. I was also Anglican or Episcopalian coming up. And my dad was actually a priest. And my mom was like Fortress Anglican. Like she was like 1923 prayer book. And so and then I started reading C.S. Lewis in an African village. And I was like, wait a minute, this guy doesn't seem like this doesn't seem like the same thing that I was doing back in America. And then the Islam, all around, I was like, Orthodoxy or Christianity feels more like that. What they're doing, but they just don't have the Jesus. There's something connected with Islam and Orthodoxy or Christianity. And then I found it in Orthodoxy eventually.
Yeah.
But so then let's go back to this thing.
Well, can I just say, I brought up C.S. Lewis.
Please.
I brought up C.S. Lewis also because I just reread The Voyage of the Dawn Treader yesterday, and I reread Prince Caspian last week. And I think that's a great example of this. And it's actually a great example of what we're talking about. This is in literature. I don't really touch the movie versions of Narnia, but this is something that really occurs in the Narnian series, where we find ourselves with characters who it is clearly a Christian book. It's clearly a Christian book series. And we are continuously confronted with characters who are facing themselves, they're facing their own sin, and they're facing what it means to be redeemed. Now, that he's called Aslan in the books, but in Voyage of Dawn Treader, for instance, when the character Lucy is about to go back to the normal world, she says, "Am I going to see you again?" And Aslan says, "You're not going to see me again here. There you will call me by another name." And he's clearly Christ. He comes from over the sea or on the east. He serves the emperor over the sea, serves his father. And what really differentiates the books from other, I think, overtly sort of preachy, teachy, didactic books on whatever people are trying to push as kind of with Christian literature, these books are so fundamental to, I think, understanding the way literature works with Christianity, because we have a series of characters who are awful. They become very bad people. Like, for instance, Edmund, from the way the book series starts, he actually talks to Eustace in Dawn Treader, and Eustace has become a dragon. He's so miserable that he literally becomes a dragon. He's covered in dragon scales, and he learns that basically he's yearning for some sort of connection with people, and he wants to do things for other people. And it's not until he becomes a dragon that he learns service. Wow. Instead of just taking all the time. And when he talks to Edmund, he apologizes to Edmund. Edmund says, "It's all right. I know you're sorry. You may have been miserable, but I was a traitor, and that's worse." And so that's Christian. It's Christian to want to root for somebody who is willing to confront themselves and how they've treated other people, and to want to serve. They want to serve other people. They don't want to just take all the time.
Yeah. So this is it, man. So then I think you're identifying, so let's call them, palpable moments. I think I would argue they're icons, but they're on film, and they're moving. But what's happening is it's a moment on film that is resplendent in its invitation to know Christ, but it's got nothing to do with Christ in the words. This is the way I try to I wonder if you understand this way. And so it's resplendent, and it could be about anybody. It could be, now this gets crazy. It could be a movie about Muhammad. And I know people are like, whoa, I think it could be a movie about Muhammad. And in that movie, they do it in such a way that Muhammad has these moments where he feels that he has done wrong, sinned, and is being redeemed. I think you're seeing a type of Christic moment. Is that enough to make it a Christian movie?
I don't think that's enough. I think that what it really comes down to is that it's a normal human emotion. It's a normal human sense of ourselves and where we fit into place, even in an archetypal sense with a hero's journey, to want to accomplish something or to want to confront something we've done wrong and to ask forgiveness or to repent of a person. But the difference is that in a Christian story, the hero or the character who finds that they can only be redeemed in either Christ himself or what Christ has set forth. That there's only one redemption. It's not just enough to seek forgiveness from a person. It's to seek a bigger sort of forgiveness. And that can take place through a wartime setting or to sacrifice yourself for others, but it has to be something in service. And also that a Christian movie, obviously the difference is that a Christian movie is where a person is serving the living God. It's the Christ is the living God. And it's not just a person who hopes to meet God at the end. It has to be now. It has to be they're doing something right now that's going to have echoes of what happens at the end.
Does the script, because movies are made with scripts, does the script need to imply Christ not even imply it? Does it need to say anything? Like, does it need to describe with words a type of Christ?
That's a good question. And it's pretty nuanced. I think that for one thing, I think these things, because of God's providence, happen unintentionally a lot of ways. And it depends on it. Usually most times, if you were to ask a filmmaker what they intended, they'll give you an answer that they don't even know the answer to it. And that happens with a lot of art. In the occult sense, on the other side, this happens in that people will write things and they feel like there's a lightning rod through them and they're bringing something forth from the other side. And that usually this is with musicians or, and there's sort of a voice for characters or demons or something from the other side. But I think with Christ, and with Christianity, the other issue with scripts is that this is incredibly taboo. And that serves a Christian message, because when you are not allowed to mention the name of Christ, or you're not allowed to, or filmmakers often don't do that, I think that can take on a form of suffering for Christ or trying to get the message out anyway.
Right.
So I think that's a major problem with Hollywood. Not all movies can be something like, the Passion of the Christ. A lot of people have issues with the Passion of the Christ because of various nuances in the film, but also how cruel and lethal the movie is. Now you see the point in the movie of why it's like that, because that's how Christ was treated. But not every movie can do that. But also you see what happened to Based Mel after the film came out. So it depends, I think, on where a person is.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
All right. So go back though, because I think I understand your answer. I don't know the answer to what a Christian movie is, because that's sort of our construct. So it doesn't. So I love this movie Magnolia.
Mm-hmm.
I put it on my list in my dumb email to you.
Yeah.
And so Tom Cruise, I don't know if you remember it.
Yes,
it's from the late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
People out there who've seen it, if you don't like cursing and harsh language, don't go watch the movie.
Yeah.
So, however, I just see a whole series of Christian events in that film over and over again. There's definitely no Christ involved except for in cursing. Mm-hmm. And then there's frogs. Spoiler alert. We got to do that, right? If we're talking movies. But at the end, there's some wild stuff happens. And I don't think I don't think there's any way you can say it's not a Christian film, but people do. They say it's not. And I might differ with you. I think it's a type of mountain of meaning. And any movie that's showing something like the sacrifice of an individual in order to serve the other, in order to create redemption, I actually think that's a Christian movie, even if Christ is not clearly evident in the film. That's what I'd argue, but I don't know that I'm right.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, what I'd say is wherever you see the pattern of redemption, you actually are seeing Christ, not the church, perhaps, but you're actually participating in an image that is Christic. And at that point, you're witnessing, experiencing, participating in something like a Christic event. Yeah. That's what I would argue.
Well, I think that Magnolia, and I've covered it.
You did cover it.
I didn't stream. It was a long time ago, but I've covered it. And what's interesting is that movie is incredibly relevant now because of Tom Cruise's character, right? I mean, that's the manosphere. That's it. He is that in the film.
They anticipated it.
Yeah, it really did. And I think that aside from having archetypal kind of symbolism from Exodus that occurs as a driving force of the narrative and the plot in the movie, there is a particularly harsh scene with, there's a contrast between where Tom Cruise's character is trying to reconnect with his father in the film. And that, of course, seems to be something that, as you were saying, is Christic. It seems to be where a character he's a prodigal son. He's lost. He's completely, I think the way I look at what you're saying is that when we have characters in films who are so bad or so repugnant or just vile, but they find redemption, we know that is more powerful than characters who tend to be even keeled throughout the thing.
Right.
Because that speaks for all of us, because in a sense, we're all kind of like that. We may not be doing the same things that he's doing or talking the same way or whatever it is, but we all sort of get disconnected from the Father. We all are living in sin. So
don't you think that's why movies with Jesus in it are impossible? Because Jesus obviously is the even keeled, he's the royal path character. So we're always looking at him like Zeffirelli's film, Jesus of Nazareth. You're just looking at him and he's too far away. Yeah. There's nothing about that Jesus character in there that has enough of us. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I always wondered if a movie with the Jesus character in it is actually just unmakeable as far as a Christian film.
I agree to a certain extent, because, for instance, Passion of the Christ, you have Jim Caviezel playing the King of the Universe. And when we're watching it, there's a disconnect where we know that we have to have a suspension of disbelief beyond what Coleridge said and go into something into another world where we're really suspending everything that we know, because Christ has already created us, is already in us. So when we're watching the film, we can't help but go, at some point, this is Jim Caviezel. Wow, he's really getting it in this, So it's hard, because our vision of Christ is he was a man and he's God, but we're still, and so we would look on a man. I mean, imagine what it would be like to live in the time of Christ and to see Christ. I guess it kind of mimics that. I think a great version of this that actually does make this work is the movie Ben-Hur with Charlton Heston, because
it's not, you're right,
because
it's over here, it's just off the edge.
Exactly. Because they do something very clever, which is that Christ is literally, the character Christ is literally in the movie, but he's just off camera. He's just unseen. So when Judah Ben-Hur is in the desert and he's a slave and he's thirsty, he's given the water of life by Christ, but we only see his hand. And then when he comes to the crucifixion, he sees him and he sees what's happening. And I think that is probably in many ways a pretty truthful statement of faith.
I know. I got goosebumps when you brought it up. I did just now.
Well, the way that again, it's like I kind of go back to Christ speaking in parables for human beings, because you think about how stupid we are and how lost and selfish and all of these things. And so he has to make clear the truth, but relate it to people in other ways. To me, it's like last week I was in upstate New York, and they had the strawberry moon, right? And the moon was rising, and it's a blood moon. It's a blood red moon. Some call it a strawberry. Some call it a strawberry moon. It was this blood red moon, and you're looking at it, and I can see the man in the moon, and it's right there. But if you look at it too hard, it gets blurry. It's like you can't really focus. So you kind of have to look at the reflection of it. You look at the stars around it. You look at the sky around it. You kind of see it in parallel. And that's often the way that it is in literature and in films. Oftentimes, that's why we have allegory. That's why we have symbolism. We look at things according to what we know. And so I think that works in Ben-Hur. That's a really fantastic, vision of, I think, the way that we
you might put that movie on your list.
Yes, I would definitely. That's probably the top of my list. That one, and I've got a couple other ones.
Before you, I want you to tell list, but before you do that, the Ben-Hur, that's fascinating, man. The Ben-Hur move that you're talking about is actually in the Orthodox iconographic tradition. The reason that the ascension doesn't make sense to moderns is like he just went up in the air, because that's actually never been the description of the ascension. The ascension is that which was tangible and real and manifest and incarnate suddenly wasn't, but it didn't go up it went from as us to as eternity. And but they had trouble trying to describe that. So the iconography they just said he went up. And you see, the literalists that we are, it's like you said, if they had Jesus come rolling in on Ben-Hur, then it would have changed the dynamic, because it would have done something to Christ that you shouldn't probably do, right? Which is, it's transcendent, and so leave it that way somehow. It's hard to do, though.
It's also beyond, it's at some point, it's beyond our human comprehension and understanding how these things occur. It's, when a person is, you imagine John the Baptist, he's baptizing people in the river, and people are down there and they want to proclaim him God. They say, oh, he's, this is the guy. And he's like, no, he's coming. And then all of a sudden he's there. But the average human watching this, they see a guy washing a guy in the river. How are you supposed to make sense that you've been reborn, that this is new life? You've been,
and right. It's like a reverse engineering.
Yeah.
It's like, well, of course he's going to get in the water and get washed so that you can understand the actual depth of the experience. Not the other way around.
We're also born in water in the first place. We're in a, there's a baby in a woman's stomach, not breathing air, but it's alive. That also doesn't make sense.
That's like the blood red moon. Don't stare at that too long. It'll freak you out, man. I'm serious. It's like when you start thinking about your wife and the baby and your mom and you, it's like, this is,
well, what was crazy?
It's not what we think it is.
What was crazy with the blood moon was it was the blood moon. And I think I literally said out loud, it's the blood moons of Israel. And then right then the war started. So I'm saying that I'm a guru. No, I'm not.
I actually wanted to throw a war curveball at you. Because, I'll just say this for people who are listening. There is a concept that there is a country called Israel that's the same concept that's in the Old Testament. So again, that's also a type of iconography. It's an image. It's not a one-to-one. It's not a geography book. Yeah. This is insane to me, the way people understand it as a geography book. And that's the same exact thing. And it's frustrating because obviously that is an allusion to the people who Christ will come for. And those people are now us. Yeah. So come on, guys. But anyway, I don't want to get into the war. Yeah. It's the first time.
You got to be careful anyway. So.
I know. So you notice I chose my words carefully, Mr. BLA. But go to your list. Sorry, I just had to. I've been sitting on it but go to your list.
Well,
this Christian movies. I think people want to hear this.
I would say that at the top of my list, when I think of right away in terms of Christian movies, just me personally, I would say The Thin Red Line, The Book of Eli and Master and Commander are three films that just right away come to mind. And I think that should be pretty evident to people who've seen the films. The Book of Eli, if you want to start with that one, do you know that film?
Oh yeah, I know that film.
Yeah,
I like that film.
Yeah, I mean,
it lost me a little bit. There were moments when it was moving too slowly for me, but that's because I'm dumb on some level. But
well, it's easy for a film to get lost in itself, because if you notice, most films will, especially films involving dialogue or any kind of what seems like a spiritual journey at the beginning of the movie, will often get lost in action in the last quarter of the film. That all the action, the budget has to be, we have to use the budget. So we get a bunch of action at the end of the movie, but it serves it in that film because it's fairly consistent throughout the film. And we have a character who, it's also ambiguous in the film whether he is blind the entire movie. You could watch the film as him being, he's blind. He's blinded in a post-apocalyptic, nuclear, dirtscape. And we find out, even though this is a great film, because we have a character who is a warrior. He's alone. He's wandering through the wilderness, and he's fighting not only a literal war or a series of battles for survival, but it ends up being that he's doing this for a greater purpose. And that is because, spoiler, of course, in the movie, there's one Bible. There's only one left in the world, and he's the keeper of it. And then the twist in the movie, for people who've seen this, and if you haven't, you should watch it. But the twist is, you should know it by now, people. The twist is that the Bible is in Braille. So even that is further removed from people. So he's the keeper of Scripture. He's memorized the whole thing, and that he's fighting for survival because he wants to preserve this thing. It's not even for himself. He meets Mila Kunis along the way, and he's got to save her, and a bunch of stuff. And then there's bad guys who want the Bible, and they want it for its monetary value and whatever. But
his actions, for people when you watch, it's very violent, and that's not relevant to you as far as it goes in making of a Christian film. Does it matter that character is that violent?
Well, it can be. I think that it depends on the levels of violence or of cruelty. And if there's a cruel notion of violence, his violence is justified in the movie because he's, first of all, he's fighting defensively. And second of all, he's fighting for the girl that he meets along the way. He's trying to protect her. And then he's fighting for a higher purpose, which is to get this thing all the way. And they are fighting a war of annihilation. They want to kill everyone. They want him dead. They want to use him. So that's important. It's kind of the same thing that occurs in another film, which is Kingdom of Heaven by Ridley Scott, which, we have Baldwin.
I like that film.
It's a great film. People who like that film always remember it, and they always point to it, because
you are right.
It's a man's film. It's a dude's rock film. And that's because even though it didn't do well in the box office when it came out around 2005, it's got Orlando Bloom and all this stuff, but he meets a series of characters in the medieval world with Liam Neeson and David Thewlis, and they take him all the way on this crusade, all the way to the Holy Land, where he meets Baldwin. And what I love about the movie is that Baldwin is the leper king. He's played by Edward Norton. Edward Norton doesn't get any credit in the film. He didn't want credit. He's totally absorbed in the role. And there's the famous monologue, where he tells Orlando Bloom that, he will, the decisions you make will not be enough. You have to understand that you will face God and you'll stand in judgment, and you can't equivocate. So your judgments have to be hard, including if you're facing a war of annihilation or a war to destroy Christianity. And so therefore violence is appropriate at the moment. It's important, send me, Lord, right? War is, I think this is one of the problems with overt or sort of educational Christian films that are made, because they tend to push this idea, especially in non-Christians heads, as if Christianity is not a valiant or fierce religion, as if it's supposed to be a pacifist religion. And that's a misinterpretation of the way that Christianity is. It's not that. David was a warrior. And so I think that, that it's important to understand the things that one is fighting for, and that cruelty is something that should be, there's a differentiation even in war or fighting between cruelty and a justified war. And I think those two films do a pretty good example of that.
It's finally warming up. The sun is out, the air is crisp. Spring must be any day now. Overwhelmed with that one closet full of junk? Have you almost been eaten by your clutter? It's time to finally go through those boxes and storage you've been neglecting. You'll be surprised what you find. Instead of throwing out these used items, you can donate them to us, First Things Foundation. 5 easy steps. We partnered with eBay Charity to list your items for 100% donation when purchased through our storefront. First, find the items you wish to donate. Step 2, take 2 to 5 pictures of your item. Step 3, email me, Nico Heers, at first-things.org. This is where you can include as much information about the selected item as possible, including the year you originally bought it, worth, product type, damage if any, and size. Don't forget to attach those pictures you took earlier. Once you've sent the email, you can sit back and relax. We'll list your item for you and be in communication with any possible buyers. Once it's purchased, we'll follow up with an email and prepaid shipping label for you to attach and send your item off. Step 5. Package it up, attach the label, and drop off at your local post office. With those easy steps, you've not only cleaned out your closet, but you've contributed in assisting local visionaries in their quest for a better life.
It's nice. It doesn't. I agree. It doesn't turn me off. Saint Cyril. There's the hagiography of Saint Cyril. So this is the saint that was standing in the doorway, basically to the temple, to Israel. To Jerusalem, when I believe it was. I want to say it was one of the Ottoman Turk rulers came, Suleiman. I think it's Suleiman. And basically, Suleiman's about to take over Jerusalem. And Cyril, who's well known to all the Muslims, everybody at this time, this is the 1300s, he comes out. It's earlier. It's the 800s. It's earlier. And Cyril comes out, and Suleiman, I could have these wrong, forgive me, but says, "What are you doing here? You're a great, you're a warrior for God in the sense you pray. You're a monk. Why are you out here we're going to have chop off heads?" And Cyril says, "Yeah, well, I've come to try to put a stop to this. Don't come in here and do this." And Suleiman says, "But I'm doing this on behalf of my God. And I do this because I serve my God." And Cyril says, "Yeah, great. You serve your God. Today I serve my God. And how many good things are you doing? For my God, I do everything today." And Cyril says, "Well, for my God, I do 2 good things. You do 1. Today, you come and I stand in front of those who can't protect themselves. So I protect the innocent. And the second thing I do today is die when you put your sword through me. So I do 2 good things. You do 1. And then Suleiman said, "Go back inside." And then they came in and killed everybody. And for me, that's the only way I've ever understood war as a Christian. And it has to be that something bad is happening. Mm-hmm. They're coming for you. And I think it's got to be pretty evident. It's got to be pretty evident.
I think of 2 things. One is, I was just thinking of the idea of cruelty and how cruelty is, could be considered to never be justified. But imagine if, I think of Vlad, Vlad the Impaler, who is an Orthodox noble who stands at the edge of the brink of Christendom versus the invading Saracens, who are doing horrible things and trying to eradicate his people. And so he impales 40,000 or whatever people as a message. And I think that, in my opinion, this would be considered an act of justifiable cruelty. He's doing this to show them that the Christendom will not be eradicated. It can't, and to set up a physical barrier where these people will come and they will have to cross through a wasteland of death in order to get to this place. I think that's probably a justified thing. And the other thing I think of is, I at Christmas time, I was visiting my family, and I have my grandfather's wartime journal from World War II. And he was on a B-24 bomber, and he was just a kid, and it's got his first bomb pin, and he bombed. It's got everywhere that he bombed. He bombed the oil fields, Tripoli. He bombed Italy, all these places. But there's a day he was the top turret in the plane, and there was a day where he said, basically, that everyone that he knew, everyone in every other plane was shot down and killed. He watched people get shot down out of their planes. He got shot by a Messerschmitt. Sweet. The bullet went right through his ear. It was this close to being killed. They declared that they were dead. The pilot and the engineer in the plane bailed, and the plane still limped in. And he said, "Only God saved us." And I think that, and that is true. It's true. He was saved, and he was a kid. He's doing his duty. He's doing it with honor. He's doing the things he's supposed to do. He doesn't give up. He's almost killed, and he makes it, and he gives glory to God.
We'll get back to it. So where there's elements of this, you're seeing something like variations on Christian movies.
Yeah. I think that, well,
I mean, the movie I like to hold up is my number one. You put the Enlightened at the top,
mm-hmm.
which is fascinating.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I throw The Mission up there, which is a really, overtly Christian movie on some level, although the Christians are doing bad stuff.
Yeah.
You like that movie, right?
Yeah, I love that movie. Yeah, it's got Jeremy Irons in it, who went to my drama school, and I've met. Very nice to meet you. Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Maybe you got your voice from him.
Yes. It's got Jeremy Irons, Liam Neeson, and Robert De Niro. It's 1986. I think it's Peter Weir. I can't remember who directed it. I think it's Peter Weir, but it's an interesting movie because elements of it could turn a person off even while watching a Christian movie. It's Jesuits, we got the Amazonian, all this stuff. And yet we have this warrior character who is trying to do penance and who, again, fights. He fights for others who can't fight. I mean, what's more Christian? I mean, I know he doesn't fear death. He's at the point he wants to die for Christ. And I think that's a pretty fantastic movie. I actually try to avoid that movie. I can't really watch it. There's a couple of movies that I really have a hard time watching because
really,
they're a little bit.
Why?
Well, I think that they are too. I think it's important to see those films, but I try not to rewatch them because they really they're hard hitting and they take a lot out of me. Another one, which is not really a Christian movie, but the movie War Horse. I can't watch. I watched it one time, and from the first 30 seconds of the movie, I'm like, oh no, this is going to be it. This is going to be it.
Seriously.
Yeah. I can't.
I don't know that film.
I can't even rewatch
is it. Because it just leaves you too scarred emotionally? Yeah.
It's too heavy. It's too cruel. It's about a horse in World War I, and the people in it become ancillary figures who are just trying to save this damn horse. There's a scene where the horse is running and gets caught up in this barbed wire in this war, and it's so senseless and so it's too much.
Well, I went there with Apocalypse Now. I did not like that film in the end. It was nihilist. It was too dark.
Yeah. I love Apocalypse Now. I think it's the greatest movie ever made.
No kidding.
Yes, I really do.
What we did
there. I do.
We had a car crash.
Yeah. Apocalypse. Yeah.
By the third quarter of that film, though, you're able to sit there and still watch these guys.
I've seen it.
Yeah,
I've seen Apocalypse Now like a million times, and the movie is so powerful because I think it's a great example of film and art where it's not necessarily factual what you're watching. sort of archon character is bigger than life, and yet it's entirely truthful. I think that I covered Blade Runner and Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep and Blade Runner 2049 the other day.
Just now, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, just recently.
That's right. And Roy Batty is clearly a Kurtz character. Kurtz is also he's that colonel in Vietnam, you know, the ears for beers guy. And it's a great example of how war, it's an impressionistic, subjective film. And it's a great example of how there are certain people, you know, it says this in Heart of Darkness, in Conrad's Heart of Darkness. Kurtz was a person who had something to say, and he said it. He's a special being. And those people do exist in the world. There are people that are bigger than life, or who do something extraordinary that goes, the things they do go beyond the things that we see. And they come sort of once in a while. You never really know where they come out. They do come out in war a lot. And the movie is incredibly nihilistic, but it has a purpose. I think the purpose sometimes
help me.
Well, sometimes in a film, you know, or in Heart of Darkness, for example, where you have what seems like utter nihilism is a fulfillment. There goes the thunder outside. Is a fulfillment of the sort of arc of nihilism to its logical endpoint, which is that we see the frustration and the futility of the events. And that's especially important in war, in light of war. And so I think that the reaction to that is that instead of nothingness, there's clearly something.
Wait a minute. This is fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the film doesn't depict that. It leaves you with the nothingness, which is supposed to imply and give me it's like a lesson. Hey, don't do war.
No,
is that why it's a great film?
No, I don't think it. In fact, I think it's not a lesson. I think that the entire purpose of the movie is not a lesson. It's not a didactic.
It's empty.
There's an emptiness, but I think that there's something to some kind of terrible, as Yates calls it, terrible beauty. There's a sort of terrible beauty in the film, and I don't think that the endpoint of it is no war. In fact, that's a good point, because one of the reasons that, and I didn't put Saving Private Ryan down, but there's a character who I think acts is supposed to be a Christian character in the film. And in Saving Private Ryan, the sniper character who's prays before he's doing his duty. But I think that movie is a great example of the problem with anti-war movies, which kind of crosses over into what are supposed to be Christian movies, which is where we're supposed to be taught a lesson from watching these events take place. And yet they're showing the very events that we're supposed to rebel against. So in other words, the Americans go and they invade D-Day, and they're trying to fight. Clearly in the movie, it's explicit in the movie that, you know, there are people they're defending that are not nothing. And yet the people they're fighting are portrayed as nothing. They're all the same. They look all the same. The characters are interchangeable, but that defeats the whole purpose of the thing. If you want to make an anti-war movie, you would have characters. You would have characters fighting other characters who are real. Does it make sense?
Yeah, you would feel sadness when a Nazi died,
right,
on that level. Yeah,
yeah, you would feel the futility of the war,
which is
itself.
Apocalypse Now. You feel sadness all the time.
Yeah.
Basically.
Well, and Apocalypse Now is also absurd. It has an absurdity to you remember Colonel Kilgore is like, they're putting the death cards on the people, and there's like a Viet Cong guy, and he got shot out, and he says, he says water, he wants water, and he gives him the water. He says, anybody that can hold their guts in, get water any day. And then he hears that there's a surfer nearby, and then he picks up the water, and the water just gets thrown. And it's absurd. It's absurd. This guy portraying
dark, man.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Well, I won't. Would you call that a Christian movie?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't call that one. I would call The Thin Red Line a Christian movie. I think that has strong Christian elements in it. But that's
me too.
But yeah, I mean, the purpose of that movie is that we have an impressionistic sort of poetic voice that is continuously in the movie trying to exalt the beautiful and the futility of all this death in the film, and trying to make sense of war. And we have a character who, I mean, that's how Jim Caviezel obviously got the Passion of the Christ because he plays that character in The Thin Red Line. It's the same character.
Same character.
Same character. And it's got Sean Penn, there's only this world and nothing
Oh,
beyond.
they're fantastic. That is one of the best conversations in movie history for me.
Yeah.
There's only this world.
Yeah.
This is the world. And this is the world we live in.
Well, and you have the character Star, you have Nick Nolte. Nature's cruel, Starls. Look at the vines twisting around everything. Nick Nolte represents this kind of evolutionary, dog eat dog, social Darwinist viewpoint of life. And some of the other characters, and especially the Starls character, is like, no, that's not the way it is.
It's an incredible film.
Yeah.
You know what? You just reordered my own list. I might, because that's probably my favorite movie of all time, but I didn't really count it. But you're right. It's Malick too. Malick's always working with it. Always.
Yeah.
I like that. I agree with that totally. I had on my list. Well, I'll do my list. No, you do your list next. What's your next one? What's another one you think people would watch?
Another one that I think probably goes by the wayside, but is incredibly relevant now is Children of Men. Children of Men is highly, highly relevant right now. We've got, we'll call it immigration things happening in the country, certain events. I don't know if you can hear the thunder, but there's a big storm, gigantic storm.
I can't hear it, but
gigantic,
kind of exciting.
We've got an immaculate conception that occurs in the film.
Yeah,
the characters, the main character's name is Theo, and he really is wandering through a wasteland, trying to do a sacrificial act. He ends up sacrificing himself for not only for this woman, but for humanity. And it has a lot of times these films, it's not in dialogue, it's not in the specific plot, but it's in the tone of the film or in the way that the world is presented in an aesthetic sense. And that's hard to place as far as what makes that a Christian film. But I think that's a pretty strong one. Yeah.
I think you might be doing the thing. My next one was Ostrov. Mm-hmm. And the thing you're doing is the island. So it's a Russian film. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, I'm catching that there's movies make impressions, and certain impressions have a reality, and the reality of redemption seems core to a Christian film, even when it's not a Christian. I mean, because you know what's not on my list? God's Not Dead. Because irony is dead in that movie, and there's absolutely nothing to smile about in that film. Have you ever seen God's Not Dead?
No, I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So then here's what we're going to do. I can't show a clip of it, can I? What's the rule on that?
No,
because I'll get in trouble.
You will. If you show a 5-second clip of something, either the music or the film will.
I will get in trouble.
Yeah, you'll get in trouble.
We've learned that, but we also can do it. We see there's some stuff you can do it with, but in God's Not Dead, you'll notice that the characters are, and it's brutal. But the thing is, the message is so didactically alive. In other words, you can't miss it. It is data, and it is raining on you in a linear way. Yeah. And when you're done, you're like, whoo, that was exhausting.
Yeah.
I don't know how anybody, but that's probably when I talk to people about what's a Christian film, they all say God's Not Dead. Should I not say bad stuff about it? You seem sad.
No, I don't like.
Is that your favorite Christian film? Did I just hammer your favorite Christian film?
I don't like it because I haven't seen it, and I don't want to see it because I don't like.
Fair enough.
I don't like even the phrasing. I don't like the title. I don't like the words that are used in. I don't like "dad" used in that title, and so
Hercules is in it.
Yeah,
remember Hercules? Who's the guy who's
you talking about? Kevin? Hercules from the Eddie Murphy movie?
No.
Okay.
I'm talking about
Kevin Sorbo.
Kevin Sorbo.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I haven't seen it.
He's the pissed off guy that gets hit by a car. But anyway, we'll come back to that. You got another one on your list?
Yeah, Rocky. Rocky is a Christian film.
That coming.
Yeah, it's and it's not only that, but it is. I think it's not an overt Christian film, but Stallone intended it to be that way in terms of it's both over. It's crazy because it seems to be both overt and subtle. And what I mean is that he intended for the film to open with a cross. The film opens with a cross. We're rising in the film. We see a character who basically has nothing, is totally separated from any sort of Christian reality, tends to live in this kind of really debased environment. Even I don't actually really like the movie Rocky in terms of rewatching it, because I don't like how grainy it is. It's like grainy and foggy.
It's really grainy.
Yeah, and I don't like that. But he did that for a specific reason, and the reason is that this character Rocky is supposed to fight his way out, and he's supposed to give everything he can to fight. And it shows you again, and I think Stallone meant for this to happen, that we have a character who symbolizes a kind of Christian struggle, who, number one, doesn't win at the end. He doesn't win, but he still wins. He wins his dignity. He wins his honor. He wins the love of his wife. He wins self-respect. And, oh, there goes the power. If I cut off, if I cut out, I'll come back in.
So I think, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know that we have a great list, but I think our list is getting great. That's what I think. Thin Red Line. Do you know Ostrov, this Russian movie that I want to throw on my list?
No, I haven't seen it. Everybody tells me about it, and I still haven't seen it yet, so I got to see it.
Well, if you're a little ortho adjacent, sounds like, especially if you're talking about the church, it's fantastic. And I can only tell you this. Well, I can tell you about the whole film, but I won't, because you're the movie guy. But I'll just tell you this. The actor in that film was a famous Soviet actor during the Soviet period. He got older, and then the wall fell, and he became an Orthodox Christian, like a serious one. He may have been baptized as a kid, and he became a serious one. And then he went out and sort of lived this serious monastic style life. He wasn't in a monastery, as I understood it. And then they came for him. He had like retired basically from acting. And they came from with this script and said, well, you're the guy. You got to make it. And he was living that way, basically. And he said, only if you give me full control. Like, you're not going to tell me one thing I'm going to say. And they brought him in, and it is fantastic.
Nice.
Yeah, fantastic.
Nice.
Ostrov is on my list. You got any other Christian films that you want people?
Yeah, there's a few of them. Master and Commander, I think, is a Christian film. It has Christian elements in it, of course. And many of those elements, I think that the ship in Master and Commander, I covered this with my friend David Patrick Carey, Church of the Eternal Logos. This movie, the ship really functions as a kind of arc of humanity, and we have characters representing sort of all different levels in the hierarchy of men on the ship, and they are led by a strong male figure who represents all the best things about honor and civilization, and they are fighting for their lives. But one important thing in this movie is that Russell Crowe's character, I think this is an explicitly, this is a very Christian character. One thing about it is that he's gentle with the lowest forms, and he is harsh with the highest people on the ladder.
I see.
So this is kind of this comes out of a kind of chivalric sense of Christendom, where, we have this boy who, the boy in the movie ends up being the fiercest one on the ship. He is willing to sacrifice himself. He sacrifices his arm. He becomes a kind of another Nelson figure. And we have characters who, even though they present Captain Jack with like the ship and the model of the ship, and that's how they go after the French, and when they are cruel to one of the other characters on the ship, he treats them accordingly. And he doesn't treat them with cruelty. He actually weeps for the loss of one of the guys and has to cut him away. They have to cut him away in the storm in Antarctica. And the scene following that in the film, I think is an extremely Christian scene, where he opens up his Bible. He's about to do the funeral service. And when he closes it, he basically says, all of us have sinned. We are all offensive. We offend one another. And if we've offended one another, God, please forgive us. And right after that, the rain falls. They haven't had rain. They haven't had water for a long time. And they're kind of they're baptized into a new life.
There
and
it is.
all of the old things are over and the new things begin. And I think that's a powerful thing in the film.
Master and Commander. That's good. I've not seen
Yeah.
that. You think I get my wife to watch that? It's gonna be a tough one.
I don't know. Well, Master and Commander is another dude's rock film. There's one lady in the whole movie.
Yeah, see, I was gonna
She's
say
a Brazilian lady who comes up and she kind of looks at, and that's another thing. She looks at Captain Jack, but I think he's married back on shore. I can't remember in the books.
He holds it together. He holds it down.
Too. He holds it together, dude. He ain't no simp. He looks at her and he's like, "We got to go, boys. Let's go." So it's pretty good.
Master and Commander.
But
right.
any films, especially any works of literature, I think that come out of a lot of the works that come out of the chivalric medieval era do this. Another great one I think is 1981's Excalibur by John Borman is a Christian film, because in the Grail, in the quest for the Grail, I believe that the Grail is the Eucharist, and that the characters they have to confront their own sin and confront their own natures, and they have to learn how to serve the king. The king, King Arthur, is supposed to be a lower kind of avatar for a Christ-like figure. So, that's sort of what it entails.
Would you say, you may not know the state of movie making per se, but would you say angel films are making angelic films?
I don't know what's angel films.
So
what is
angel films? So I'm making this movie with my brother and Scooter Downey and some other characters, and it's a documentary. It's like Anthony Bourdain goes in search of Christianity, basically.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
and it's cool. We're stuck in some production ruts. We're trying to figure out investors and money. But
I saw the Tucker interview.
Yeah, that's right. You did see that. Yeah, man. That was a real thing. I'm watching that guy right now because we sat down for a whole day together, and I personally just think this, for anybody that's listening, not that anybody cares, but in just spending time with him and talking to him we have 2.5 hours of rolling tape on that. That dude's legit. I mean, you may not like what he's saying. I don't know what your politics are, but there's nobody, he's not going to bed at night and saying, I fooled him. Right. It's not like that for all those people that want to go CIA and all that stuff. He's just an honest guy who I think's waking up in terms of his Christianity. And I think he's like getting a really stiff back, which is like, I don't really care about the rest of this because Christ is real somehow. And I got to do this. That's my gut. That's my gut on that. Yeah. Pretty wild. Pretty wild.
Yeah, I agree. I think so too. I mean, Tucker Carlson is funny because he is exactly where I come from. I mean, he's exactly everything he says looks like where he went to school and does is exactly like everyone that I grew up with. And so when I hear him talk, especially when I hear him talk about his religious life and his religious upbringing, he's Episcopalian. I mean, it reminds me of that. And he is looking for something. He's looking for something more, I think. And I really like that interview because I think a lot of people, especially a lot of people watching, will know that is real. And
it's real, bro.
And so I really dug that.
Oh, good, man. I'm thankful. Well, yeah. In 2 seconds, I think people will find this interesting. And again, I'm happy to have your expertise on, but this is actually interesting because during the making of this film, I was in London and I met with the head of the Angel Films, like the guy. There's 3 brothers, I think, or 2 brothers, but we just met with one of the brothers and they basically explained what they do. So I'll tell you what they do, and then maybe you've got a comment on this, but essentially they've created this guild. I forget how many. It's hundreds of thousands of people though. And basically you could join the guild or me. You got to answer a bunch of questions. It's a bunch of demographic questions about who you are, all kinds of stuff. They're downloading, hundreds of millions of data bits on information. And then basically when a filmmaker comes to them, they'll pretty much take anybody and they take variations on whether it's a whole film and then they put it in front of the guild. And then they run these algorithms that say, straight white males, living in the South said this about the film, and they return all this data on whether it's a 20-minute clip, it's the whole movie, whatever it is. And then they break it down and they have a rating system. And if you score over 80, they say, we'll make your movie, or we'll be instrumental. Maybe they shop out some of the production, but the point is they're ready to roll. If you score lower than 80, they send you back and say, make another, edit it and cut it and bring it back. They're trying to get you to get into this zone where it's profitable. That's Angel Films. And they're Mormons, or they're of, let's say, Mormon tradition or something. And so they're interested in Christian-ish films. And that's something in their own personal story.
It sounds like a medieval version of an artisan's guild for making movies, and that's really interesting. That's an interesting way to do it, and I think that it's from what you said. I mean, it's interesting that it has to be. We have to keep up with technology. We have to keep, you have to be appropriate and keep up with technology as far as, I understand running through an algorithm. And maybe that's the best way as far as trying to determine whether you're going to make content for people with something so big. I think that making a movie is incredibly difficult. I've got friends who are in the movie industry. One of my best friends is a screenwriter. And he tells me the trials and tribulations of making movies, and it's fickle. It's incredibly difficult. And a lot of times it comes down to, I was an actor, and it comes down to what you look like, who you know, and where you're going to get your financing. And that's it. It's kind of like, it's not difficult to conceive that Danny DeVito is so successful, if I take him as an example, because one would think, why would you put Danny DeVito in a movie? Well, because if you're going to have a character who looks like Danny DeVito looks, for instance, you need the best looking version or the best example of that. You want that. And he's it. He's like in Always Sunny. I mean, he's perfect. He's also a successful producer. And so it's not necessarily that people have to look like Chris Hemsworth or something. Right. It's that they have to be the best versions of those particular slots that they're filling in. And so it's an incredibly fickle industry. And also it's an unnecessary industry when you consider life and what we all sort of do in life. It's amazing. Richard Burton, we talked about this last time, I think, that Richard Burton and Peter O'Toole continuously talked about how ridiculous it is that you can make a living playing pretend and playing dress up when there are people like Richard Burton's whole family were slate miners, and it's like there are people who are trying to make a living for their family, and people watching this are going to go to work every morning. They're going to work their ass off. They're going to come home and feed their family, and they know they can't miss a single meal. And that is, G.K. Chesterton said that that's probably the most noble, those are the heroes. That's probably the most noble thing you could possibly be, is a person who never misses a meal. You serve your family, you're together. Because think of what an anomaly that is in the world right now. And yet you still have people who are making movies and playing dress up and getting paid millions of dollars. And so on the levels of different things you can do with your life and how you serve God, I suppose that's all dependent on the person.
But you love movies, and yet you live in that paradox, because you're right. When you strip them bare, sometimes my wife does this. She's a very critical viewer. She strips it bare and she starts to actually imagine the lights like right off the set, and she strips it bare in her mind while she watches it. And when she does that with me, I watch it too that way. And it's like, it's like an absurdity. All of a sudden, you just want to get away from it. You realize it's all fake,
Well, I mean, Tom, I really like Tom Cruise. I think Tom Cruise is the greatest Hollywood figure. I think he's great. And I'm sort of I've gone past his personal life and his, whatever I know about his, I don't know any of that. That could all be PR. That could all be, I don't know. And who am I to judge anyway? So what I do know is that every movie that Tom Cruise makes is a movie to make people happy. He wants to entertain people. He knows, and he said this, he knows he's not running into burning buildings in real life, saving kids. He's making movies, right, and he's got millions of dollars. And what I really liked was that during the Carunca 5 years ago, when they were making Top Gun Maverick,
I remember the Carunca. I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember he was screaming at people on set, and they said, "Look, Tom Cruise goes crazy." Well, you got to listen to the content of what he says. He says basically like that Top Gun Maverick is the only movie they're allowing anyone to make at the time. It's it. And if they say that you have to abide by the, you have to come on set and stay 6 feet from people or whatever the BS was, then he says, we got to abide by it to make the movie because I'm putting people through college. I'm paying the gaffer so his kid can have food on the table. We're paying for all of these people to live their lives, and nobody else is doing that right now. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I
didn't know that
I
story.
appreciate, I appreciate that things like that are done by people, but I think it's important, it's kind of like when you consider a novelist or a writer, I think that, for one, writers are important. At the beginning was the word, the Bible is written, and that writing is important for civilization and for, understanding who we are as people. And that no matter what, if people live the hardest life or the roughest life, people still need, they need to back off, and they need to, from that, and they need to rest, and they need to see how other people live, and they need to find truth. And a lot of times we can't find truth in just the lives that we live. We're not enough to do that. Sometimes we have to read or to watch other people so I think that these things are important, even though they tend to be full of dilettantes.
I know. I still love a good movie. You do too. Yeah. You've been doing it for a while, and you know your business. Guys, go watch this pod. It's cool. But you think the movies are becoming more likely to be Christian in the way that, however by the way, I'm not sure we've done a great job defining it, because I don't think you can, but do you think they're becoming more Christian? People are leaning into that now when they make movies, or you think they're becoming less Christian?
I don't know. I think that Christian themes or what we have tried to call Christian movies will continue. They'll continue to be anomalies, but they will be potent and powerful. And it really doesn't matter the number of films that are made, as long as the ones that are made work and are great. And you take a movie like, I'll throw out one other movie here. The movie Signs with Mel Gibson, nice. I think is a great Christian movie. It's relevant. It's even relevant today. We've got the fake alien stuff and all this stuff, but we have a character who was a religious figure. He was a priest. He loses his faith because of the grief from his wife's death. He learns to, and he becomes a miserable, hateful person. And then he learns that things do indeed have meaning, that God gives us meaning. And then at the end of the movie, there's a perfect redemption. He goes back into serving God. And I think that movie was successful. It was powerful. It's potent. It's something that we can sort of latch onto. And we all know that when we see movies where people do the right thing, when they do good, when they perform some kind of pseudo holy act, right, we feel uplifted by that.
Yeah, man.
And as far as movies going with where they're going to go, I think that the more that Hollywood produces movies where everything is subverted or inverted, and where we have ideology or political ideology or a sort of self-based identity as the thing that's uplifted, they will continue to falter and fail. And they may make more of them for years and years, but those aren't going to be the things that people remember or that they care about. So
that's a hopeful way to think about it. I think it might be can I give you one more little piece? Is that I think on some level, what you said is, I think what I was trying to say poorly before, which is, if you participate in reality, the way the Orthodox would describe it, it means you're participating in Christ. And so reality is Christ. And then what we do is we have variations on degradation. So everything sort of flows out as a degraded variation on Christ. And then, but wherever you see that you've been describing in all these great, comments of yours about movies, whenever you suddenly through a film, you're experiencing, I don't know, joy or something, you really are being drawn up into the higher things. You're drawn back toward reality. And so for me, that's what a movie, Dostoevsky talks about this. That's what a movie should do. It should draw you back toward reality and out of the thing you've created as your own. So for a lot of people, that's like, oh, it lifted me up. You could argue it brought you closer to Christ. That's what an icon does. So for me, I really like that what you said, because even one person making one film, there's a light in there, there's a light in that darkness. And I don't see any way they stop. I don't, it's human existence. Yeah. To be alive and to be filled with light is to be like Christ. So, I mean, somebody's going to be around like that. Maybe even us, Bazed Lit Analyzer.
Yeah. An example of that is the movie The Brutalist that I just covered a little while ago, which is a movie that it's brutal. It's a study of a 20th century architectural movement, but it sort of trauma packs. It has all of the horrible things that you could imagine in a movie. It's got drug addiction and adultery and the H cost and the horrors of immigration, and it's got all these things in it. And yet what happens in the film is that the industrialist character goes to this town council and they say, if you're going to build this gigantic thing on this hill, it has to be a church. You have to have a cross. It's got to be a church. You got to have a church in there based. So then what happens is the architect tries to subvert that and say, well, I'll make a cross, but the cross won't be made. It'll be the outside of the cross. In other words, you're looking at pieces of stone that make the pieces of stone that are cut out where light comes in and we have the cross. And some may see that as, oh, well, there's a cross, but to me, it seems like he's subverting the order of things. And he's saying, I'm not building a cross, but there's a cross made. And then the end of the film, we see that there's an altar inside of this subterranean look. It looks like hell, really. You're inside this subterranean place and it's all, it's clean and brutalist with lines, but it's all concrete. And the cross, the light from the cross is inverted on the altar. So we have an upside down cross on the altar.
Oh,
but guess what? God makes the crooked way straight. And no matter what, the cross still wins in the thing. So at least there in the end is actually still a cross. The thing ends up being the people got their church. Now it's not like what they liked. And this guy tries to subvert it, but it still wins. And I think that's going to sort of continue to be a thing that happens in Hollywood and entertainment and literature. And oftentimes this happens, again, unconsciously through people. God can work through anyone. Yeah, and so hopefully that will continue. It will continue.
That's good stuff. That's really good stuff. All right. So we're pals now. And then we just got to make this thing, got to instantiate. Maybe one day you come to the restaurant.
Yeah, for sure.
You're invited. Okay.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you.
We'll hook you up with all night food and wine.
Awesome.
And cigarettes.
Sweet. Thank you, man. Thanks, bud.
Hey, to your work, man. Keep going. Okay.
Hey,
nice.
That's
BLA, also known as Henley, but online we call him BLA or Bazed Lit Analyzer. Go check out his stuff. We'll put all the links in there. Okay.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate you. Love your show. Love the channel. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Keep going. We're gonna all find ourselves together at a table sometime, and you know what? It might even be the big banquet when this crazy world ends for us. Let's hope so. Let's hope so. Peace to you, bro.
Peace.
Well, besides the fact he was actually lighting up and actually speaking. He sounded like Nick Nolte from Thin Red Line. We're going to go up that hill. That's what we're going to do. I love that guy. So I think that's a dinner waiting to happen. But I hope you enjoyed that today. I want you to enjoy something else. The art of giving. Consider being a monthly donor, $20, $30, $40 a month. I'm asking, I'm begging. Hit like and subscribe. Do that too. I'm told to say that. I'm so bad at saying it. Do it right now. What? Ding. But also consider joining us, and we hop on these calls every now and then. Not very often lately. I've been traveling. And just get to know our organization, because we keep doing different stuff. We got a field school. We can go for 6 weeks at a time to join our guys in the field. We've got a restaurant. We have a Art Automata coming up at the restaurant in Greenville called Capey. And the Art Automata there is going to be a concert. Tickets to come join for speakers. Frederica Matthews Green is going to be one of our speakers. Yeah. Jonathan Pajot is going to be a speaker down at the Florida gig. Neil is going to come in and play music with Kate and Dirt Poor Robins. My kid's going to come sing at the Greenville event. Nathan Jacobs is going to come and be one of our speakers on hospitality and philosophy and theology. I don't know, man. I don't think he really... Andrew Gould, one of the greatest architects in the country right now. He's going to bring his philosophy on how we build things, and talk about that as hospitality down in Florida. So this is happening. That's happening. This is happening. We got Art Automata. We got Super Dinner Society. If you want to throw a party in your world and you want to bring Automata, we can do that now. Look at the links. Check us out. And most of all, thank you for supporting us. It's little by little. I'm going to buy one of those algorithm guys. Like, I don't know. Can you buy somebody that does algorithms? I feel like they're going to be in Burma or someplace. And then they will just we'll have 50,000 people tomorrow watching because of the algorithm. Should I do it? I love you guys. See ya. Heavy things lightly.